yeah, just a little bit of context on this game. So I work with children with social, emotional, and mental health difficulties, or children who are also neurodivergent. So this is a quiz on neurodivergence. So yeah, we're gonna explore neurodivergence with a quick quiz, and then I'm going to do a presentation. Hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions in the quiz. So this is kind of like a little pre-assessment, just introducing a topic. So this is what I would normally do if I was starting a topic. I would have a little Kahoot to introduce, and then we'd do the key learning and then come back to it. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. Okay, so yeah, understanding neurodivergence. Here we go. Good luck, guys. So what population of the world is neurodivergent? Within this Kahoot, there'll be different types of questions as well, just so we could show off all the tools that are available to teachers to use in their own personal Kahoots as well. Okay, so yeah, the correct answer is between 15 and 20%. That figure is likely to rise in the future as well. So that is the equivalent between one and 5 in a classroom. What does ADHD stand for? Yeah, so it's ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactive disorder. So a child with ADHD is expected to receive how many negative comments linked to the condition before they reach 12 years old? So you've got between 0 and 50,000. This is what the latest research suggests. So the latest research suggests that a child will receive an estimate around 20,000 negative comments linked to ADHD, which is a frightful figure, which is why I try and do my best to encourage positivity around the condition. What percentage of neurodivergents remain unemployed? This is after school, post school. Yeah, it's a large figure. It's a large figure, 30 to 40%. That's why it's so crucial that we get things right in school and put all the strategy in place to support these learners and give them the best opportunity possible in life. Everyone in this session is neurodiverse. True or false? The answer is true, and I'm going to explain that later in a bit more detail in my presentation. So this one you've got to type the answer for. What is the most common type of neurodivergence? Double points because you have to type this. What is the most common type of neurodivergence? Yes, I'll put a little bit incentive there, double points. This is brilliant for neurodivergent learners because an incentive, you get a little bit more engagement if you put an incentive in there, a little bit more likely to work. So well done if anybody got that right. Dyslexia is the most common type of neurodivergence, which is a reading disability. Yeah, there's a range of other neurodivergent conditions there. So well done, guys. Yeah, fantastic. Ready to continue? Thank you. So I want you to order these neurodivergent conditions from the most common to the least. So this is like a drag one, you drag and place where you think. So I've experience working with all of these conditions. So yeah, if you were paying attention on the previous question, you would have realized that dyslexia is the most common with between 5 to 10%. Then you have ADHD, which in England is just around about 4%. Then you have autism, which is about 2 to 3%. And Tourette's syndrome is less than that, between 1 and 2%. Okay, just the last one. I think this is my last one to finish. Where was the first ever person diagnosed with autism from? So this is just a pin. So it's within one of the states. If you just pin where you think, I'll be super impressed if anybody gets this. Hence why I've also put a double points attached to it. Wow. We actually got a lot of correct answers there. That was insane. That's insane. Yeah, so the first diagnosis recorded, so my latest information is it was Donald Trippett, who was the first ever person diagnosed with autism, and he was from Mississippi. Thank you. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for joining that. Let's have a look at the podium. Well done, Dom. Melissa, second place, fantastic. Who is top of our leader? MG. That doesn't stand for Mr. G as well. I promise that is not me. That's not me. Well done. That was fantastic effort, guys. And I'm gonna go over and start sharing my screen and going through how to support neurodivergent learners in the classroom in a bit more detail. And where does Kahoot fit into all this? How do I use Kahoot to interact and motivate the most challenging pupils? Okay. I've got dual screens. I'm just going to go on that side. Okay, so supporting neurodivergent children in the classroom using Kahoot. How do I do it? Let's go through it. So a little bit about me. So I've been working with neurodivergent children and children with social, emotional, mental health difficulties for 10 years this September. I started my career as a volunteer. Then I was given a teaching assistant contract a week later. I was then, after speaking to my head teacher, I said, go away, get your job, go away, get your degree, come back and I'll give you a job as a teacher. And that's exactly what happened. And from that point, I have been middle leader of primary to now, I am now assistant head of main site. So I'm responsible for all children on our roll between 3 and 16. Aside from that, I've created my own social media. So if you follow me, thank you so much because you're also spreading the awareness. The goal from my social media account is to raise awareness and promote positivity around supporting these fantastic neurodivergent and children with social, emotional, mental health as well. So yeah, the account was called @Mr. J Teacher. It was created to raise awareness around these conditions, but also to show an insight on what an inclusive neurodivergent classroom looks like. So since the creation of those accounts I use, so TikTok has got 1 million followers, which is I think 1.1 now, which is fantastic. And Instagram was 100,000. It's now, I think the latest figures are 134,000. So that's also rising rapidly, which is fantastic support. The support from the neurodivergent community has been absolutely fantastic. I have signed a book deal and I'm in the process of writing a book at the minute that is also going to support neurodivergent learners in the classroom as well. So understanding neurodivergence. So what do the stats say? So from the Kahoot, from the little pre-assessment quiz, an estimated 15 to 20% of the world's population exhibits some form of neurodivergence. So that could be ADHD, could be ASD, could be dyslexia, dyspraxia. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. So yeah, between 15 and 20%, and that figure that's from 2020, that figure will be rising now, and that's in terms of the global population as well. Connolly, Constable, and Mullally 2023 evidence that 92.1% of people with significant absence from school were neurodivergent. This is a key issue in England. It might be an issue around where you're working as well, wherever you are all over the globe. Attendance can be an issue. Persistent non-absenteeism is definitely an issue in England, and people and children who are neurodivergent, this impacts them the most. So the time we have with them in school, we need to make sure we're having those positive interactions that are going to make an impact to that child. So one of the questions was, is everybody in this room neurodiverse. So I just wanted to dive into those key terms in a little bit more detail because they often get mixed up. So I just wanted to provide some clarity on that. So neurodiversity is the idea that every brain is different. So in that Kahoot there's not every brain is unique. So in that room, everybody is neurodiverse. Every brain is unique. Neurodivergent, that is a specialist way that the brain processes information, and you can categorize that with certain neurological conditions such as ADHD. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a neurodivergent condition. Now there are several of these neurodivergent conditions. However, so in your classroom, your classroom would be neurodiverse. There's a range of different brains in there. Now you might have the odd neurodivergent learner. I'm working in a neurodivergent school. I have a high percentage of neurodivergent learners, whereas you might maybe have 1 to 10. I'd be interested in the chat to see how many people, in your typical classroom, how many neurodivergent learners that you have. But yeah, in every classroom, it's neurodiverse because everyone's brain's different. So who's neurodivergent? So I've alluded to it a little bit on the previous slides, but it's anyone who has ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, Tourette's syndrome, FESD, so fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I've just had recent training on that. Oppositional defiance disorder, which is a fascinating one. Learning disabilities and many more. I couldn't fit them all on the slide. Yeah, oppositional defiance disorder. I've came across, that's quite a rare one. I've came across that once in my career. That's absolutely fascinating. So that is where I had to kind of program my brain to say the opposite to a child to kind of get him to do a task. So otherwise, it would be a kind of point blank refusal. It's literally, it's oppositional behavior where they're going to refuse an instruction. So I had to really tailor my teaching and adapt my language around this. So for instance, I would say to the student, right, there's no way you're going to finish that math job. Absolutely no way. There's no way you're going to do it. And then that student would be like, right, well, I'm going to prove Mr. G wrong. I'm going to do it. And that's the oppositional defiance element. Absolutely fantastic condition, really, really fascinating one. The main conditions I work with, ADHD, autism, dyslexia, they're the main three for neurodivergence that you would probably see in the classroom. So I work with ADHD. I'm a big advocate of it. I'm also waiting as an adult to be assessed because I do have traits of ADHD. So it'd be interesting to see if I actually get a diagnosis of ADHD in the future. So that might be something to look out for if you follow me on socials. So yeah, dyslexia is the most common type of neurodivergence. I've already kind of alluded to this, but ADHD and autism are on the rise globally. Now, there's a few reasons for this. Mainly is to do with the science. We know more about these conditions now. I'm not sure about other countries, but just from my experience in England, it wasn't until the year 2000 that the NHS officially recognised ADHD as actual a neurological condition. So when I started the profession, even when I started the profession where I'm working now, there were some staff who I worked with who were skeptical that ADHD was a myth, for example, and they were skeptical and just kind of put it down to like bad behavior or bad parenting. Now we know that isn't actually true. It's a neurological condition, which means it affects your brain. And it's really difficult to argue with brain science because they know that stuff. So how do you support a neurodivergent learner in the classroom? These three elements of what, in my experience, are what you need. These are the core ingredients, what you need to create an inclusive classroom that supports a neurodivergent learner. The first thing is a positive relationship. So I'm going to dive into all these three in a bit more detail separately, but absolutely the most fundamental thing to managing challenging behavior is through positive relationships. So a little reference, if anyone's seen Suicide Squad, triangle, I want you to study that triangle. Positive relationships at the peak. You've got positive interaction, which fuels the positive relationships. If you have those two components, that is going to lead to engagement. If you're missing one of those components, then the likelihood is that it's going to have a negative impact on engagement, which may lead to negative behavior change or refusal to engage in a task. So yeah, positive relationships. So these are so important when working with neurodivergent learners. It's more challenging to secure a relationship, a positive relationship with a neurodivergent child due to their adverse experiences. They may have been through trauma. There's a range of scenarios which makes it harder for a neurodivergent child to kind of let down the guard and trust you. So it's so important that you get the relationship bit right. That's what you can kind of see through my socials as well. I'll do things in the classroom that you wouldn't typically see in a mainstream setting. So I'll dance with the students. I'll actually initiate and incorporate movement breaks when the children need them. So yeah, and a great way that we're going to go on to is how Kahoot can help really develop these positive relationships as well. Another thing that I've missed off just from my notes there is one strategy that I found super useful in terms of developing positive relationships with students is trying to adapt whatever curriculum you have. So in England, we have the national curriculum, which is a set of guidelines of what you must teach, but you can also adapt this framework, which is where, say, if you were doing instruction writing, then you can start to incorporate the child's interest around that. If you've got a child's interest around that, then that's going to lead to better engagement as well. So positive interaction. So this isn't only the way you interact, but it's also your way of kind of repairing a relationship. So this is also to do with relationship kind of maintenance as well. So if the relationship's been damaged, say you've had to put that student out of your class, or you've had an incident with that student, or something's happened in class that's kind of damaged that relationship. You have to be able to put in the time through positive interaction to repair that relationship, and it's known as something called a fresh start approach. So if a child leaves your classroom for whatever reason, say they're disrupting learning, when they come back into your classroom and say that they've taken a couple of minutes outside, they've self-regulated, they're now in a position where they're ready to learn and to re-enter the classroom, then that's when the fresh start approach would happen. So as soon as that student comes through the door, oh, well done for making the right choice, thank you for joining us. That type of positive interaction, rather than, I've seen cases in the past where we've sent a student out and we haven't had that fresh start approach. Now that has led to the relationship being damaged, which has ultimately led to a reduction in engagement in that lesson, which is something that we don't want. When we're talking about trying to increase the employability status of these learners, we need to be getting this positive interaction and relationship maintenance part correct. The last part of the triangle is the engagement. So if you have a positive relationship with the students, you're providing positive interactions, and you're repairing the relationship when it's necessary, that's going to lead to more student engagement in lessons. So if you've got those positive relationships and the positive interaction, you're going to get some engagement in class. Kahoot is an absolutely fantastic tool to kind of facilitates all three of these aspects. So where does it fit in? So in terms of student engagement, it can be more challenging to engage a neurodivergent learner. You may have difficulty sustaining attention. So Kahoot is a classroom tool I've used to create my own kind of short game like presentations, like the one that you've been a part of. Immediately through that, the children feel connected, and because the interface is so rewarding and it's incentive based, and the children are competitive. They love to be battling each other. The leaderboard, they're trying to get on the leaderboard. It's a competitive element, and you've got the incentive there. So I've created personalized Kahoots, which are really good at the start of the year. So if you've got a new class and you don't know anything to do with the, you don't know any of your students at all, or you might know some of your students, this is just quite a nice kind of like icebreaker activity that you could use. So I've used it for all areas of teaching as well. I've used it for my starter, if I'm going to introduce a topic. I've used it for my core learning, my core teaching. I've also used it for my plenaries, which is like in England, which is kind of like your summary of teaching. What have we learned? So a little kind of like end of the lesson quiz as well. This is really important because with neurodivergent learners, you're working through something called their working memory, and you're trying to get that learning secured into the long-term memory. And Kahoot is just a fun and interactive way that it's another strategy that you can do that. There's also this link between neurodivergent conditions and low levels of dopamine, or an impairment with the production of dopamine. So low levels of dopamine can contribute to a poor working memory, like I've just alluded to, reduced concentration, and a lack of motivation and engagement. Now, this is where Kahoot fits in. Kahoot works as a catalyst to increase those dopamine levels by giving a neurodivergent brain enjoyment, satisfaction, and motivation. So Kahoot will also improve the three areas of support of the triangle that we alluded to before, of positive relationships, positive interaction, and engagement as well. So what may it look like in my classroom? So I could use Kahoot for a starter activity. So that could be to introduce a brand new teaching concept. It could be to build on prior knowledge from a previous lesson, or it could be used as a pre-assessment as well, as a kind of a baseline, just to engage where the children are not, where they're at, and where you need to know, where it'll obviously inform your planning and preparation for the next stage as well of the learning. My core teaching, so that'll be used. So I use Kahoot to explain like the main learning objective, or what is the goal for that lesson, but also for positive interaction and engagement. Due to having an impairment of dopamine, Kahoot is increasing those dopamine levels, so it's an absolute win-win for me. Plenaries, so that'll be just to recap learning or something that's happened in the classroom, or to add more learning to achieve the learning objective. So if a child's not quite there, we can do a little Kahoot to boost that. And that child wouldn't know. So you can be really, really clever. You can do like a kind of a mini plenary. You can go around the classroom. You can kind of understand who's got it, who hasn't. And then you can use that little Kahoot just to boost that learning, consolidate that learning concept, trying to get it from the working memory and secure it into the long-term memory. For transitional activities as well. So that would be from transition from like secondary to high school. From primary to high school, secondary to high school, the same thing. From primary to high school is a massive transition. In England, it's from year 6 to year 7. So we could use a Kahoot just to help with that, to gain more knowledge and to gain more insight, but also for fun ways to build relationships in the classroom. It could be at key transitional points. So if you've got a class who are really lively after an outdoor break session, or after outdoor or recess or outdoor play, you can use a Kahoot just to bring them back, because you know it's going to engage the child. You can settle the class, and that is a great way to build on the lesson, because you're setting off the expectations and boundaries of behavior from the start. And finally, I've kind of alluded to this before as well, but just to repeat, consolidate any learning that may need repetition in order to be stored from the working memory into the long-term memory as well. So yeah, just a note to finish. So I found this from the Scientific Research Publishing Incorporation 2024. So students across the world perceive Kahoot to be a positive tool that enhances their motivation, enjoyment, engagement, and concentration. Kahoot is inclusive for neurodivergent children and supports all learning styles. So yeah, your visual, your auditory, your reading, your kinesthetic. So yeah, if you're not using Kahoot in your classroom, think about how can you use Kahoot in any capacity, because the potential's there. You've just got to use it. And then just a list of references there at the end. Thank you guys for your time.